Hello. Memory is I don't know what you'd actually call it. It's a sort of collecting organization. It translates video clips from various broadcast media in the Arab world. I suppose that the idea is that most people don't really understand what the Arab world thinks because, well, hardly anyone in the West actually speaks Arabic. And by the way, we can include a lot of Muslims here as well. So don't think a lot of Muslims in the Western world speak Arabic, because they don't. So memory simply takes clips. Some of them are pretty nasty and let you know of the nasty currents in the Arab world. And some of them show that there are many people in the Arab world who are perfectly sensible, reasonable, rational people who know that the Arab world is going wrong in many respects. However, this one is a particularly egregious example of, well, a sort of mixture of entitlement and cowardice. And maybe those two go together anyway. This chap here, now, when I was a kid, I was always taught that there are some things that you really shouldn't make fun of. You shouldn't make fun of the way people look, because they can't really control that. I mean, I'm not talking about the way they do their hair, but like, say they have some sort of disfigurement, or they're not that attractive, just the way they're put together, or they have some physical disability. You shouldn't make fun of that, because it's something over which they have no control, and that's not fair. Right. And the other thing is, you shouldn't make fun of somebody's name, and for the same reason. That's what they're saddled with, and it's just bad taste to make fun of it. But in this case, I'm going to make an exception, because this man is not only just about the ugliest human being I have ever seen in my life, but he's also got a name that just begs to be made fun of. He's called Yahya Sinwar, and Sinwar is spelt Sin-War. And believe me, this is a man for whom nothing could be more appropriate a handle than Sin-War. And here we are. So let's just take a look at this here. Now, he's talking about the book of Ezekiel and the pandemic. So I looked at the book of Ezekiel, and it said something about an eagle flying off with a pine tree. Okay, yeah, too much of that wacky-backy, I think. Let's carry on. Now, just a minute. I forgot to say, Yahya Sinwar is the head of Hamas in Gaza. So he is at the forefront of the fight against Israel, the filthy Zionist entity, as he keeps on referring to it. And let's split up what he's saying here. As for the question about whether we need them to give us anything, we don't need anything from the occupation. All right, we don't need anything. That's where it should end. But it doesn't. He says this loud and clear. He says a lot of things very loud and very clear, at least in the speech. The mental thinking is a little bit muddier, though. If a time comes when we have no choice, what do you mean no choice? You've always got a choice. You can choose to accept from the Zionist occupiers whatever they give you, or you can refuse it and die. But you will die as martyrs, because Muhammad himself said that if you die in a plague, you'll go straight to heaven. So why isn't he rejoicing in that? Okay, so we don't want anything from you, but on the other hand, we do want something from you. if we're in trouble and there are no ventilators, now, why should there be no ventilators? Well, Gaza gets billions of dollars and pounds and euros in aid. Billions and billions. And they don't. And if you look at the living conditions of most of the Gazans, you will see that that money is not finding its way into their welfare. But those guys, you can also find places in Gaza of the most astonishing opulence. And that's because the billions are finding their way into the pockets of that sort of person and his henchmen and his family members, because it's a family and they've got the place literally sewn up. And what they're not spending on Mercedes Benzes for themselves, they are spending on buying materials to build, for instance, tunnels under the border so that they can send terrorists through the tunnels into Israel. Now, who builds these tunnels? Well, frequently it's children of the poor Gazans, children who get killed when the tunnels collapse because proper precautions are not taken, because after all, it's the will of Allah. If it's the will of Allah that those kids die digging tunnels, why is it not the will of Allah that he and his family die of coronavirus complications? It's different rules, isn't it?
وهم تخرج أرواحهم ولا يجوز أجهزة التنفس. أنا بقول بنت.
Okay, so we don't need anything from you, but if we do need something from you and you don't come across, we will make you suffer. Something wrong there, really. I don't know what he's saying here. 6 million Israeli settlers unable to breathe. That's a precious sentence, isn't it? First of all, 6 million. There are more than 6 million people in Israel now, but he's got this 6 million because of the Holocaust image in his mind. And the other thing, unable to breathe. Well, again, it might be the Holocaust image, but what he's really talking about is sending people with coronavirus into Israel to infect the population. That's germ warfare, you know, which is forbidden by the Geneva Convention, but that's a small detail in his mind, and his name is, in any case, Sinwar, isn't it? Let's carry on.
أننا سنجعل 6 مليون مستوطن إسرائيلي نقطع عنهم النفس. لا تقلقيهم محمد على مقاومة غزة. العالم يضرب بالكورونا. So the whole world is hit by the coronavirus, but the members of the Al-Qassam Brigade, who are obviously magically immune, are working day and night to complete their preparation for the liberation. You notice that? They are working to complete their preparation for the liberation. That's a few steps down the road, isn't it? So you can't be held responsible for not actually doing any liberating. Okay, so now I'm afraid it's not just the Israelis who are in trouble, it's the Americans too. When I saw Trump signing his decision to allocate $2.2 trillion that's just in case you don't understand. You see, he's miming the signing. For the okay, so you Americans are going to get $2.2 trillion for the corona. Oh, look at that face. You Americans are going to get $2.2 trillion to alleviate the problems of the coronavirus. And what he's saying is, I want some of that. You're very rich. You can give us money. The fact that we, that is, have not prepared for this is neither here nor there. We just want more money. Frequently, there are floods in Gaza.
And you see photographs and videos of poor Gazans struggling through flooded streets and houses and things like that. And the reason for that is given as it's the same almost every year. You see this. The Israelis have opened dams to flood Gaza. Well, there actually aren't any dams there. As far as I know, there are no large bodies of water at all in that desert area. What is happening is a natural occurrence that comes about because of the composition of the soil in that part of the world. There's a sandy subsoil, and then on top of that there's a very fine dusty soil which is called loess or loess or something. It's spelled Loess. And what happens is this: if the water falls softly and gently and over a long period, the ground gets soaked and the water goes into the ground. But if it comes all of a sudden, somehow the loess and the water combine and it forms like a waterproof skin on top of the subsoil, and the water just runs straight off it. There's a similar situation in Cyprus, and a friend of mine who was hiking there many years ago, he was walking with some friends in a wadi, which is a sort of flash flood channel, and this happened. There was a sudden rainstorm upstream, and the water, instead of soaking into the sides and the bottom of the wadi because of this loess, it just came straight down the wadi like it would come down a ceramic channel, and he was drowned. So I know all about the dangers of this stuff. Now, this can be mitigated. You get these floods, and the way you deal with them is you make channels to divert the water. But they're not spending their money on that. They're spending their money on digging these tunnels to go underneath to send terrorists into Israel and into killing kids who are forced to build the tunnels for the greater glory of, well, they say of Allah, but it's people like him. Anyway, so they're not prepared. They don't have ventilators because they don't have the money. They're wasting their money on Mercedes, opulent houses, terror tunnels, and they're nothing. And they're getting their education free from the UN schools. All the money that goes into Gaza is being salted away in foreign banks. And it's when you've got an emergency like this, there's nothing left. So America's rich. We've got to tap them with some money. They've got to send us the ventilators.
تذكرت بالضبط وهو يوقع بنفس الطريقة قرار بإعلان القدس عاصمة لدولة إسرائيل.
It's Trump's fault because he signed that the document that said Jerusalem was the capital of Israel. Well, as a matter of fact, Bill Clinton recognized that in 1992. However, the Americans will pay. So you Americans are going to pay for their improvident behavior. Oh, look at that face, that triumphant smile, that's, the story of Dorian Gray. If ever a man was reflecting the evil in his soul, that's this guy. And now, just a minute. So we don't need your help, but if we do need your help, you better bloody well give it to us. And now the Lord, by means of this virus... hang on a minute. This virus cannot be seen by telescopes and microscopes. This is a guy who doesn't know the difference between a telescope and a microscope.
بعدد كبير جدا.
If you looked at a virus through a telescope, he doesn't realise that.
من التلسكوبات والميكروسكوبات والمجاهر الموجودة في الكون يرى بأعداد محدودة منها.
He doesn't know how telescopes and microscopes work, does he? It's entered all the cities of the world where curfews have been declared. Because God isn't pleased with the maladministration of the world. Well, if it's in Gaza, then God isn't pleased with him either, and the maladministration. There's this thing in the Quran in which Muhammad says, if you're in a city with a plague, don't leave it. If you're outside, don't go in there. And the reason for that is simple. In Muhammad's mind, he does not believe in infection. He said that in the Quran. It's absolutely 100%. There is no such thing as infection. If there's a plague in a city, it's God's judgment on you, and you shouldn't try and avoid it by leaving. So this guy is actually flying directly in the face of what Muhammad says about God's intentions for him. Now, you know how a lot of these people say, or whenever there's a terrorist incident, they say, well, this got nothing to do with Islam. Well, in this case, this man really doesn't have anything to do with Islam. He is the head of a criminal gang. He's using Islam for sure. And it's very easy to use Islam in a situation like this because it's all there in the Quran. But in his case, in his heart, this isn't Islam. This is just him worried, his power over all the people in Gaza being destroyed by this virus. All right, well, that's it. That's Yahya Sinwar, and that's his attitude. So we'd all better watch out, because if we don't give them ventilators, they're going to make us suffer. Yeah? That's the sort of people. God, you've got to feel sorry for the Israelis with neighbours like that, haven't you? If you want to donate or contact, the information will be rolling over the Graniopteryx as I speak. Please like, subscribe and share, because it does help with the algorithm. If you visit my channel on YouTube and one day discover that I've disappeared without warning, you'll still find me on BitChute or Minds. Just go to either of those platforms and do a search for Graniopteryx. If you're already watching this on BitChute or Minds, good for you. Meanwhile, if you're watching this on YouTube, remember that you must keep checking the subscribe and bell icons, because occasionally they reset. Till next time.